Hey, I'm Simon, and this is my guide to lube MX-style linear switches with grade 0 lubricant. Uh, I might put out another video in the future for tactile switches, but for the time being, this is applicable to linear switches only and using grade 0 lubricant. I can go further in depth in the future if that's necessary, but let's just pop right in. All right, so you're going to need a couple switches, or just one, to learn with, a switch opener. Now, these come in a few varieties. The straight piece of metal is fine, or a more advanced one is also good. You want a lube applicator, and you can get a big pack of these, like $5 on Amazon. They're originally meant to put on and remove makeup, I think. To get your switches out of your keyboard, you're going to need likely a cap puller as well as a switch puller. Now, I do recommend that you use your switches for a good amount of time before deciding to lube them, as that will break in the switches and basically give you an idea of whether or not these switches are for you. Obviously, you're going to need some lube. Now, this guide is specific to grade 0 lubes. The reason for that is there are alternative lubes that may have different viscosities. And depending on the viscosity, you want to either use a different applicator or lube in a completely different way. All right, for the sake of this guide, we will be using 205 grade 0, which is quite annoying to lube with, and we will be learning on all black housing switches. This is the best way to learn. So we'll open them up. There we go. Now, the top housing is not touched in any way. We have our stem, our spring, and our bottom housing with the leaf inside. Now, first I'll showcase the full lube method, and then I'll showcase the lazy lube method. First of all, springs can be lubed in a variety of different ways. I personally use oil on springs, and I lube them inside of a jar. That makes things quite easy to do. We will showcase how to lube the spring with grade 0 just in case. So, what we want to do first is grab a decent dab of lube, about this much, if you're using 205. Now, the key here is for the lube to not be visible. So we'll start with the inner rails of the housing bottom. We just give them a light brush up and down. And in this case, we can see the lube. This means we have over lube, but that's not an issue. We're going to go back and remove the excess lube. All right, next up, we're going to get the area around the stem hole and then very lightly put the tip into there. I personally don't put it all the way in and out, as that leads to overlubing quite often. Next, we're going to put 2 little dabs on the points of the leaf where the stem feet would touch. All right. Now we're going to clean up our applicator. We're going to go in for a second round and just remove the excess lube here. Now, that amount over there looks okay. This side looks spectacular. You should not be able to see your lube. This is why I recommend learning with black housing switches. Until you're comfortable enough to know the amount of lube necessary, I would stick to black housings. Now, what we can do for the stem is just very lightly get the rails on either side. And the same thing applies here where you don't want to see the lube. If you see it shiny, that's fine, but if you can see actual white of the lube, you've lubed too much. I'm going to do a little light touch here. Fit the spring in. Go. Put the stem back in and close it up the correct way. And we've done it. We've gone ahead and lubed a Cherry MX Black. Feels quite smooth. Feels good. Generally, after lubing each switch, I will put it up to my ear and press it and make sure what I hear is a plastic on plastic sound and not a icky, slimy lube sound. Additionally, when you press it, you'll be able to feel if it's over lubed by the simple fact that there's more drag than usual. Now, of course, lubing a switch in any capacity means there will be some sort of lube drag. This is why we're very careful to not over lube the switch. All right, next we'll do the lazy lube. Now, the lazy lube is my preferred method, and this is done by only lubing the housing bottom, completely ignoring the stem, and of course lubing the spring separately. What I do here is I grab about an equal amount of lube, and what I'll do is as I hit the rails and the stem hole and the leaf, I leave a little bit more visible lube than I normally would. Now, the whole concept of this is when the stem enters, as you seal up the switch, it essentially disperses the lube down the rails. Once you get the hang of it, you will learn how to leave a big dab near the top of the rails. So as the stem goes in, it essentially pushes that dab down. So that's pretty much it. This is fully lubed now. We'll quickly lube the spring. In this case, I'm just going to put the applicator straight through the spring, in and out, and then place it in our switch. Now I put the stem in with no lube and close it up. And it feels about comparable to the first one in terms of feel and sound. So that's another way of doing it. Very good. All right, so that should be the basics. What I'll do is I'll put the links to the switch opener as well as these little applicators in the description, as well as anything else I can think of. If you want me to do more loop guides in the future, drop a like and come back around sometime.